You thought the number would change the feeling. That once you crossed a certain income threshold, something inside you would finally settle. The tension would dissolve. The subtle comparison would quiet down. The background anxiety that whispers, "not enough," would fade. But it didn't. The income grew, the lifestyle adjusted, the environment upgraded, and yet the internal sensation remained strangely familiar. Slightly inadequate, slightly behind, slightly exposed. The mistake was never mathematical. It was perceptual. Most people believe wealth is an absolute metric, a fixed figure, a clean milestone, 10,000 a month, 100,000 a year, a million in assets. The problem is that the human nervous system does not evaluate wealth in isolation. It evaluates position, and position only exists relative to others. From an evolutionary standpoint, survival depended less on how many resources you possessed and more on where you ranked within the tribe. Relative advantage determined mating access, protection, influence, and long-term security. Your brain still runs that ancient software. It does not ask, "How much do I have?" It asks, "Where do I stand?" So when your income rises, your comparison group rises with it. At $2,000 a month, you compare yourself to neighbors, classmates, coworkers. At $10,000 a month, your social environment subtly shifts. Your feed changes. Your conversations change. Your perceived peers change. Suddenly, you are not comparing yourself to the average. You are comparing yourself to the next tier. The baseline recalibrates almost instantly. This is not weakness. It is hedonic adaptation combined with social hierarchy perception. The brain normalizes improvement at a shocking speed. What once felt extraordinary becomes standard. What once felt distant becomes expected. The new normal forms quietly, and with it, a new gap appears. That gap is where the discomfort lives. Most people misinterpret this discomfort as financial insufficiency. They assume the solution is numerical escalation, more revenue, larger investments, bigger moves. But if the root is positional awareness rather than material lack, then no number will stabilize the sensation for long. The system is recursive. You climb, the horizon expands. You reach, the reference shifts. You accumulate, the benchmark updates. Consider how quickly language changes. 6 figures, used to symbolize elite success, now is described online as basic. In certain cities, it is framed as survival. The symbolic meaning of money erodes in real time because meaning is socially negotiated. When collective perception shifts, individual satisfaction shifts with it. This creates an invisible treadmill. The more upwardly mobile you become, the more you are exposed to those above you. Social media accelerates this exposure. You do not compare horizontally anymore. You compare vertically, globally, constantly. You are not measuring against your local environment, but against curated extremes. Private jets, luxury penthouses, portfolio screenshots, silent displays of status disguised as normalcy. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between statistical outliers and standard expectations. It only detects hierarchy cues. And hierarchy cues are everywhere. Clothing, tone of voice, travel frequency, neighborhood, network proximity, subtle confidence patterns. These signals inform your brain where you stand. Even if you earn more than 90% of the population, if your daily exposure centers around the top 5%, you will feel average or behind. The internal narrative becomes distorted. I make good money, but I'm not there yet. Yet where is there? The destination is undefined because it is not a number. It is a rank, and rank is infinite. This is why people who double their income often report only temporary increases in life satisfaction. The spike fades. The new lifestyle locks in. The comparison set adjusts upward. The feeling stabilizes close to its previous baseline. You did not fail. The mechanism is functioning exactly as designed. There is also identity drift. When your income rises, your self-concept must update to match it. If internally you still identify as someone who is not wealthy, evidence to the contrary feels unstable. You may even subconsciously downplay achievements to remain coherent with your old identity. External growth outpaces internal permission. So even when the bank account changes, the self-image lags. This creates cognitive friction. You earn more but still feel like the person striving from behind. You upgrade your environment but carry the same internal ranking schema. You sit at higher tables but scan the room for those above you. The scanning never stops because it is automatic. There is another layer most people ignore. Wealth is not experienced directly. It is experienced through comparison and security perception. If your fixed expenses expand proportionally with income, your margin of safety may not increase significantly. A person earning $4,000 with $2,000 in expenses may feel more stable than someone earning $20,000 with $18,000 in fixed obligations. Absolute numbers deceive. Ratios determine psychological comfort, but ratios are rarely celebrated publicly. Gross income is visible. Net stability is not. So you chase visible markers while the invisible structure remains fragile. The cultural narrative reinforces this loop. Achievement is broadcast. Milestones are public. Quiet contentment is not. The algorithm amplifies extremes because extremes hold attention. And attention continuously reshapes your internal benchmark. When you scroll through success stories, you are not consciously deciding to feel inadequate. Your nervous system is simply recalibrating reference points. What once seemed exceptional now seems common. Exposure rewrites expectation. Over time, this produces a subtle dissatisfaction that feels like ambition, but often masks comparison fatigue. Ambition builds. Comparison drains. They look similar from the outside. Both involve striving, but one is internally directed toward mastery. The other is externally directed toward rank. When rank dominates, satisfaction becomes conditional on outperforming others rather than expanding capacity. That is an unwinnable game at scale. There will always be someone richer, earlier, more connected, more leveraged. If your emotional equilibrium depends on occupying the top visible tier, equilibrium becomes statistically impossible. This is why people can accumulate substantial assets and still privately confess, "I don't feel rich." The statement is not irrational. It is relative. Rich compared to whom? If your internal comparison group consists of billionaires, founders who exited at 28, hedge fund managers, or legacy families with generational capital, your own progress may feel marginal, even if objectively extraordinary. The tragedy is not lack of wealth. It is misaligned reference framing. And yet, the solution is not isolation or denial. It is awareness. Once you recognize that the sensation of not enough is often a hierarchy signal rather than a resource signal, you regain leverage. You can separate actual financial instability from positional discomfort. You can evaluate whether your stress is about bills or about comparison. Most of the time, it is the latter. This awareness does not eliminate ambition. It refines it. You begin to pursue growth from strategic intention rather than emotional compensation. You expand because you choose to build, not because you are trying to outrun an invisible ranking anxiety. The paradox is that true financial solidity often begins when the comparison loop weakens. When your internal baseline stabilizes independent of external status fluctuations, accumulation becomes cleaner. Decisions become less reactive. Risk becomes calculated rather than ego-driven. You stop chasing the feeling of being rich and start constructing the structure of being wealthy. One is emotional, the other is architectural. And architecture is slow, deliberate, compounding. If you still feel slightly behind despite objective progress, it does not mean you are failing. It means your brain is measuring vertically in an infinite hierarchy. The ladder has no ceiling. There is always another rung. The question is whether you want your emotional state tied to its top. Because if you do, you will never arrive. The horizon will keep moving. The reference will keep shifting. The definition of enough will keep dissolving. But if you understand the mechanism, the feeling loses some of its authority. You can see it for what it is, an evolutionary echo amplified by modern visibility. Income can grow indefinitely. Rank cannot be stabilized universally. And the sensation of richness, paradoxically, often depends less on the size of the number and more on the frame through which you evaluate it. Change the frame, and the number finally behaves differently.